Hey all, here are OS Reviews. You're watching our hands-on review of the Aufo M1. These are TWS wireless earbuds that sell for under 60 bucks, sometimes on sale for around $50, so about average in terms of price. Now what's interesting here is they do have a ambient mode or a transparency audio mode, which is digital, so you can tap on them and they will amplify the sound around you, allowing you to make a conversation without removing them from your ears. Otherwise, they do have IPX7 for waterproof rating, so you can definitely use them to go to the gym. They will still survive. They also have Qi wireless charging support as well, so you can pop this onto a charging mat to wirelessly top it up. And then finally, this company claims to be manufactured by Shenzhen Mijia Investment Co. So I'm not too sure if that is the same Mijia as a subsidiary of Xiaomi. The battery life is average. We are talking about around 4 to 5 hours on a single charge for the buds themselves. With the battery case, we are talking about an extra 3 to 4 charges, so we can get around 20 hours or so when on the road. Packaging is done pretty well. It's magnetic. It says hello when you first open it up, so it is quite fancy. Now, one thing I will say is that the controls for this thing is not the most ergonomic because there are so many features, and they also want to give you the ability to do things like raise the volume, answer reject phone calls. We are talking about some very complicated set of taps as well as presses. It will definitely take a little bit of time to master. Now, these do not have Qualcomm's aptX chip, which is a slight con in terms of the audio codecs, so it's not going to be absolutely the lowest latency, but it does support the standard SBC as well as AAC for Apple iPhones. And we also have some spare silicone tips, which are presented in this separate little mini box, in addition to a USB Type-C cable for charging if you don't want to use wireless charging. Final piece of spec is that they do have a graphene driver inside, so just like some of the other slightly more premium pairs of buds we've seen, the sound quality should be quite rich and pretty bass heavy, which we'll discuss later on in the sound portion of this review. But just taking a closer look at the design of the case first, again, a very simple design constructed out of a polycarbonate plastic that does feel quite solid. There is a built-in lanyard strap. You just pop it on here, as you can see, and it begins to immediately charge up and indeed is functional. Using wireless charging, it will charge up the battery case in around 3 hours, and that's about the same speed as you'll get if you're using Type-C on the other side. Overall, the construction quality feels more solid and substantial than the Redmi AirDots, which are also plastic, but this feels more hollow and a bit cheaper, whereas this feels a bit more solid and reassuring. But both have pretty similar overall dimensions, so you shouldn't have any problems in terms of taking it with you and then traveling and popping it into a pocket. So a very clean overall design. We have just the buds, which are magnetic, and they can attach with a satisfying click. When you remove them from the case, that's when they turn on and begin pairing with your phone, again using Bluetooth 5.0. Now, the design of the buds are pretty modern. They have an LED ring around them to tell you the status. You can tap on it, and they also will light up to give you confirmation. As you can see there, the entire area here is touch sensitive, and it is very responsive. They are very glossy though, so it does attract a fair amount of fingerprints. With that being said, they are again very lightweight and tiny in terms of their size, so they feel quite light when you're wearing them. It doesn't cause too much stress or strain on your ears. As a quick size comparison, here they are next to the aforementioned Redmi AirDots, which you can see are larger by contrast. So these are tiny, same thing goes with the thickness, and then here are the Apple AirPods. Finally, one last comparison with the Mifo O5s, which I previously mentioned just because they are in the same price range and they both have the transparency audio function. Moving into sound quality and performance, overall I was pleasantly surprised in terms of the sound profile itself. It's quite loud, it's rich, and it's fairly dynamic. So it has a good mix of bass. If you're a bass head, you'll definitely enjoy these because they are quite heavy in terms of the drum beats. You can definitely feel the thump when listening to an EDM track. They also have a very distinctive kind of overall ring-shaped design for the LEDs, which do make them look quite cool when you're using them in the dark. Otherwise, mids are also quite solid in terms of giving us plenty of detail. In terms of making vocals and acoustic tracks sound quite clean, as well as giving it plenty of warmth and clarity. In terms of trebles, it's a little bit weaker. It definitely isn't quite as crystal clear or giving us 100% detail as, say, truly audiophile grade pairs that we've seen, like the Mifo O7s. And honestly, not too dissimilar from the Pamu Slide Minis that we just reviewed, which were already very good. These, again, have a pretty similar sound profile because they also use graphene drivers. So good bass, which is nice and thumpy, also strong mids. So it's going to do well for most types of consumer music, casual music listening, pop music, acoustic tracks. You really won't find a problem here. In terms of the audio latency, again, not having Qualcomm's aptX is a little bit of a weakness in terms of not giving you the absolute lowest latency. If you are, say, watching an action film and using Netflix, for instance, you may notice a little bit more of a split-second delay, but for music listening, it definitely doesn't pose a problem. You do have some audible clicks whenever you are tapping on them to give you some confirmation of if you tapped correctly or not, but sometimes the holding, especially for different durations of time, like holding for 1.5 seconds versus 3 seconds, is a little bit easily confused. So I do think there might be a more elegant way of approaching the controls. The biggest weakness, I'd say, is a little ironically in the ambient mode, which, although is definitely functional, I did find it to be more sensitive than the one found on the Mifo O5s, which worked without any real problems. On these, they definitely amplified the sound around you, but it's not completely stable. Sometimes the volume for the amplification is a little bit louder, sometimes it gets a little bit more quiet, and it does produce quite a bit of background noise as well, or a little bit of static when you are in the ambient mode. So sometimes that fluctuation in the amplification volume can be a little bit disturbing, and something that hopefully they could improve in a future software update, because I think that's really one of its main selling points, and it should be slightly stronger in terms of the consistency. So that's more or less it for our hands-on review of the Aufo M1 TWS wireless earbuds. It is, for the most part, pretty solid in terms of its construction, and also has decent sound thanks to the use of a graphene driver. In addition, it has a few special touches like a built-in Qi wireless charging, a lanyard strap, as well as that ambient mode for a relatively low price. That does make it slightly better than some of the other pairs we've seen, and it's going to be a little bit cheaper and more compact than the competing Mifo O5s. Thanks for watching here at OS Reviews. That's been the Aufo M1 TWS wireless earphones.